It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric has the morning off. Hi, thanks for being here. You ready? All right, this is our favorite audio cut of the day. You got to have some entertainment with it all. You got to have entertainment. You know? I mean, I know it's insane what's going on, but you got to have fun. You can't let them take the joy out of your life. You can fight hard, you can work hard, and still have fun at the same time. As the one American Thinker article had when it talked about dealing with the left, it says, mock them. You know, have the message in the mocking, which is absolutely true. But this was just the greatest. And Media Research Center put this together. And this was yesterday at the hearing with PBS and the heads of PBS and NPR about taxpayer funding. And they got into, you know, the bias and all that. And Eric and I have said it's way past bias. It's political activism. And that's fine if you want to do that as a broadcast network that's completely commercial. You live and die by the ratings and by the advertising. But I don't care whether you're conservative or liberal or whether your goal is to be purely independent. No taxpayer dollars for media. None. You cannot have that perception of a conflict of interest and government support. Absolutely not. So they got into the discussion, one of the discussions, and Representative Ro Khanna of California was using the fact of Mr. Rogers is a reason, that's one of the reasons that you need to have taxpayer funding because of the quality programming of Mr. Rogers. And many people might be shaking their heads saying, absolutely, yes. I mean, Mr. Rogers, we like Mr. Rogers, great for the kids and everything else. Remember when we were young and quality programming. And so maybe taxpayer dollars should, because remember, even though I say no taxpayer dollars for any media, including NPR or PBS, a plurality of Americans want the funding to continue. Only 1 in 4 Americans want their funding cut, which is why Eric and I are cynics when it comes to whether DOGE will really be a success, because the American public will say one thing, we want the cuts, but then they want the federal government to provide them with the niceties that they like. Well, we like the nice programming that they have, so the federal government should fund it. They got no business being in it. We don't care. We like it. It's a extra thing that we get from the federal government. Yeah, but you're putting that on the backs of future generations, your children and grandchildren. How can you be so evil? I like the accent on evil. But Representative Ro Khanna talking about Mr. Rogers and Media Research Center inserted some audio, well, actually a video, but you'll hear the audio, of Mr. Rogers and asked the question, would Democrats and PBS and NPR endorse this video of Mr. Rogers now in 2025? Would they endorse what he had to say, and does it justify what he said, spending taxpayer dollars on PBS? Here it is. It's pretty funny.
Really don't know?
No, I really don't. I'm on the
road.
road.
All of history. It's a successor to Mr. Rogers.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers, I know.
Okay. Are you familiar with his 1969 testimony?
I am.
He said, I want to quote, because it's one of my favorites. I studied this actually going to school. It's some of the most effective testimony in Congress. He said, I give an expression of care every day to each child to help him realize that he is unique. I end the program by saying, you've made this day a special day by just your being you. There's no person in the whole world like you, and I like you just the way you are.
Boys Boys are boys from the beginning. If you were born a boy, you stay a boy. Girls are girls right from the start. If you were born a girl, you stay a girl and grow up to be a lady. Everybody's fancy, everybody's fine. Your body's fancy, and so is mine. Only girls can be the mommies. Only boys can be the daddies. Yes, sir. Everybody's fancy, everybody's fine. Your body's fancy, and so is mine.
Now, I will admit, I'm a tiny bit uncomfortable saying my body is fancy. Okay? I'm not sure why. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But I just, I don't, I'm a little bit uncomfortable. I don't know if I'm going to be walking around saying, hey, Gare, how you doing? Well, not bad. My body is fancy. Oh, let me step back and look. Oh, you don't say. You're Gary. You got a fancy body. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I have no idea what the hell it means, but. So there you go. And I posted it on my X page if you want to check it out or share it. At Gary Red Eye 1. At Gary Red Eye 1. If you want to send that, because a ton of when I played it, I wasn't even thinking about putting it on my X page, and I got a bunch of people writing, "You got a shirt there. Where do I find that? That's great." I go, "Oh, okay, I'll do it." So at Gary Red Eye 1. So see, ask your Democrat friends, since they're using Mr. Rogers to justify effective and efficient use of taxpayer dollars, whether they would agree to it if Mr. Rogers' message was that. And then when they start chasing you and burning your... Okay, you don't have a Tesla. Okay, I can't even make that argument. Oh, my gosh. Oh, boy. Let us go to Patricia in Washington's, since that all related to the transgender movement. Patricia, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi, Patricia.
Yes, I liked your comment about you can cure democracy, but you can't cure stupid. And that's why I don't care two figs what any Democrat politician or voter has to say if they voted for Tampon Tim agenda. I mean, everything the Democrats do now is transgendered to me. And Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, he called this signal thing mind-boggling. Well, to me, mind-boggling is this forcing this totally untrue transgender agenda on everyone if they can. So that's just my comment. Well, you can't cure stupid.
Well, thank you so much, Patricia. With Warner, it was when he was on CNBC. Let me see if I can find... I think I saved the audio cut, and I'm so glad you brought him up, because he was talking about the signal gate there that, by the way, we addressed fully in the first hour if you want to listen to that. But here it is. And I want to play the moment here because he was, here it is. Let me just play. This is Mark Warner, Senator Mark Warner on CNBC about Signalgate. Here we go.
Can I ask you? Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens when they say there's nothing there. And if the text comes out and there is packaging and target information from the DOD delivered on this channel, that's one of the reasons why I think Secretary Hegseth should step down for the good of the administration. And again, I think there is a little richness of what you said in the fact that if you go back, way back in the old days as well, and oh my gosh, Hillary Clinton was using the wrong email, or Joe Biden's incompetent. Come on, guys. If you don't think this is a case of incompetence and a pattern after a variety of other kind of sloppy use of classified information, then you've not been following the last 60-plus days that I've been following.
But in terms of going after terrorists, and in terms of what we've seen accomplished, I mean, even this was a success in what happened. And some of the, I thought some of the what we know about the text was fairly thoughtful. You remember the Biden administration started with the biggest F-up in history with Afghanistan and 13 dead Americans. Let's not get too sanctimonious and high and mighty about screwing up,
should
Senator.
go back even to.
And the thing that got me, he's smiling and laughing as the anchor is talking about 13 soldiers being killed. So I'm just glad you brought up, and I wish you could see the actual face on him, but he's like smiling and laughing as he's talking about that. And it's just, to me, that was just so reprehensible. But I know what you mean, when you talk about it, and I've said this before, when Eric and I started talking about the radical transgender movement and what it meant, we were quite accurate. We said feminism is gone and feminism has disappeared. The feminist movement's gone. Actually, it's not gone. It's been reborn, and it's been reborn by the right, because the feminist issue of the 2024 election was not abortion. It was a radical transgender movement and the absolute misogyny and women hatred of mainstream Democrats, because it's across the board. And so when you look at it, I understand when you say that the whole Democratic Party is the radical transgender movement, because that is the one thing that defies any type of science, critical thinking skills, logic, and is built on the hatred, the threatening, and the intimidation of women. And when you start from that point, any other issue that you attempt to defend is suspect. And Republicans were bringing out yesterday the fact of, you can't compare Signalgate to Hillary Clinton, because Signalgate was an absolute mistake. Nobody is saying they did it on purpose. It was a bad mistake. Now, Hegseth may have to pay a price for this, because obviously when he said nothing was classified, you don't see many, I haven't seen any conservative defend him on that particular point. That stuff would be considered classified. We know that when something like that is produced, and when you're in, they had the whole argument whether it was, what was it, war? What is it? What they refer to war? Oh gosh, not a war mode or attack mode, whatever they were saying. And you had Goldberg from The Atlantic change it to, it was attack, not see. Sorry, it doesn't cut it. The whole thing is, was it classified? Is that sensitive information? And no, what war plan or attack plan? That was it. And he said, it's not a war plan. It's not a war. It's the worst war plan if it's a war plan. Well, no, it wasn't a complete war plan or attack plan, however you want to do it. But it related to something that was going to happen, and then it was happening, and then after it happened, damage assessment. All those things are always classified when they come out. When they're produced, they're classified. Hegseth cannot win that argument, and conservatives aren't defending him on that particular point. That's the weakness of it all. It's the how you try to justify what happened instead of what Trump said in the beginning. Trump came out and he said, and Trump was right when he came out. Eric and I said it yesterday when Trump came out and said it was a mistake. We know who did it. The assistant to Walz will investigate it. Okay? And that's it. Don't have to go further. And then the surrogates didn't know. Walz was saying, I have no idea what's going on. I was dealing yesterday with Trump supporters who were talking about that this is somehow a plant and this was the Democrats doing it. And I'm like, are Trump people not even paying attention to what Trump says anymore? Do you ignore Trump? Do people now speak for Trump without hearing what he has to say? I mean, it's mind-boggling what's going on there. But the Democrats cannot the Republicans can justifiably use and bring up the differences. This was a mistake. Hillary Clinton was calculated, absolutely calculated. There's nothing to laugh about what happened in Afghanistan that led to 13 American servicemen and women being killed. There's nothing to laugh about people falling off of airplanes trying to get out because of the insanity of the Biden administration. There's nothing to laugh about Biden lying to the American people when he said all the generals, every single military person told him to get out, and it was just the opposite. Every single military person told him not to get out. In fact, they said what we had suggested and others, leave a small force in of 2,500 people, keep the airport, and keep the over-the-horizon surveillance that you have in an area of the world where you need it. What happened was that's exactly what they told him. And when those generals testified under oath, you then knew that Biden was lying. Those were all calculated. So when Democrats come out and start saying, oh, you guys were criticizing, don't ever talk about Hillary, don't ever talk about Afghanistan, to hell with you. Those were calculated, premeditated acts. They weren't a mistake. This was a mistake. The only thing you can look at and go, the calculation of what was wrong is that it seemed like the surrogates weren't on the same page as President Trump was to start out the day 2 days ago when he said, bad mistake. Marco Rubio said it yesterday. Look, it's a mistake. Bad mistake. We learn, we move on. Thank God. Everything worked out well. Because everybody should have been saying it was a mistake. It was a big mistake. We shouldn't have done it. It's not going to happen again. We've corrected it, and we need to correct this because we're going to continue doing this type of foreign policy and having successful attacks against our enemies. That's how they should have done it. And Trump was on that path. He didn't go the full complete like I did, but when Eric and I heard what he had to say, we go, well, that's fine. And then next thing you know, everybody seems lost and doesn't know what the message is. And then Tulsi Gabbard had to go back on it because she said, nope, there was no classified information the first day. Then after the everything was released yesterday, she said, well, I'm not familiar with the exact text that, we're relating to here. So everybody's backing off. That was the bad part of it. But what happened was a mistake. Own up to it, move on. You had a successful mission. Nobody was killed or injured because of the mistake. 866-90-RED-EYE.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
Dust storms and wildfires of mid-March, perhaps the most dramatic signs of extreme dryness in the southern plains. Yet USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey says there are other clues to just how dry parts of the region are.
There has been a lot of dirt and dust blowing around day after day, and that has led to some degradations in the quality of our winter wheat crop, also some concern for rangeland and pastures that have just been buffeted. We've lost some topsoil moisture. We've had erosion around root systems.
With Rippey saying it may take time for the region to recover
from this windy, stormy March that has not brought any relief in terms of moisture to the southern Great Plains.
As a stretch from West Texas to southwest Kansas has not had meaningful rainfall since mid-November of last year.
As of mid-March, we saw topsoil moisture statewide in Texas rated 71%, very short to short, and a rangeland and pasture condition rated very poor to poor to match, also 71%.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up on the bottom of the hour. By the way, Eric's out this morning. If I don't mention that once, someone's going to say, Gary just mentioned his name. I'm going to get the email. Where's Eric? Where's Eric? Eric's not there. You didn't mention his name. It's because I did mention his name, but I almost forgot because there's so many stories we want to cover, including a new poll that's out there. Plus, the latest cuts from DOJ that they call America Last Grants. We'll get to that. Plus, some more audio from the hearings yesterday on whether NPR and PBS should get taxpayer funds. All coming up next.
listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Before we get to the last audio cut of the day, a couple of stories where we want to get to. Roughly 2/3 of voters support President Donald Trump's efforts to deport members of the violent Venezuelan gang, while nearly half favor impeaching the judge who blocked the deportations. A poll found that 64% of likely voters backed the Trump administration's policy, with 47% saying they strongly support it. Among Republicans, support is overwhelming, 89%, while 69%, 89% of Republicans, let me see, is that strongly support or support? Among Republicans, support is overwhelming at 89%, while 64% of unaffiliated voters and 43% of Democrats at least somewhat support efforts to support Venezuelan gang members. You understand what that means? The majority of Democrats do not want to deport Venezuelan gang members. Wow. You're not gonna win that. And so we'll see where that goes. I mean, I have a feeling that's going up to the Supreme Court after the 3-judge panel voted 2-1 to continue it. And a lot of legal stuff written on that saying, well, they're covering the legal issues except for one thing. They didn't cover the legal issue that they, as judges, they don't have any say in this. They're leaving themselves out of it. So this is interesting to see where that's going to go. The other story is, and this fits in with the audio cut coming up, that's asking the question, why are we funding PBS if we're talking about we might not be able to fund Social Security? We might not be able to, down the road, we're not going to have the money. What are we going to do? Why are we funding all these different things? And when you look at this here, this is the latest DOGE cuts. The Department of Government Efficiency announced it has terminated 113 contracts valued at $4.7 billion on Tuesday, including a U.S. Department of Agricultural consulting contract for Peru's climate change activities. They actually come up with a great name for it. DOGE has announced that they are canceling America Last grants. America Last. They terminated 113 wasteful contracts with a ceiling value of $4.7 billion and savings of $3.3 billion, including a $145,000 USDA consulting contract for Peru climate change activities. The funding also included $10 million for gender equity in the Mexican workplace, $12.2 million for worker empowerment in South America, $6.25 million for improving respect for workers' rights in agricultural supply chains in the countries of Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Also eliminated $5 million to elevate women's participation in the workplace in West Africa, $4.3 million to assist foreign migrant workers in Malaysia, $3 million to enhance Social Security access and worker protection for internal migrant workers in Bangladesh, and $3 million for safe and inclusive work environments in the southern African country of Lesotho. DOGE, led by Elon Musk, is a temporary organization within the White House created via executive order earlier this year. So there you go. That's from Fox News. Wow. You can't win that with the American public. There's no way you can win it. But what do you think about that? Only 43% of Democrats want the Venezuelan violent gang members out of the country. The rest are either I don't know or they're for it, keeping them here. Again, how do you communicate with people that believe that insanity? How do you communicate with them? How do you do it? I want to open up dialogue. How do you where's the dialogue begin? I think that Venezuelan gang members should not be in this country. I think they should. It would be an interesting debate. I don't think they'd have it, though. They'd just start screaming at you and, maybe want to put a swastika in your Tesla, but I don't have a Tesla. I do like the people, the pictures, the Photoshop pictures of Teslas, different make cars, emblems on them and everything else, saying, well, my Tesla identifies as something else. Who are you to make that judgment? Oh, it's so much fun. All right, here we go. This is Representative Eric Burleson yesterday on the whole hearing that was held on taxpayer funding for NPR and PBS. Here we go.
I now recognize the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Burleson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that it's important to bring this conversation into the context that needs to be said, which is that we are $36 trillion in debt as a nation. We're spending 20% of every dollar that comes in from taxpayers just to cover the interest. And guess what? American people, bad news, interest rates are going up. So that 20% is going to get worse and worse. We had Ray Dalio come in and tell Congress that we are entering potentially dark territory. There's a number of red flags. We're at the worst level of debt. We're at a worse level of debt than we were after we left the World War II, okay? We're at that level of debt, and we didn't just fight a war. We're facing potential wars and conflicts. We're at that level of debt, and we didn't just emerge from a recession or a depression. If that happens today, you'll see the dollar no longer be the world reserve currency, and we will be in serious trouble. And so that is the context that we're in. Look, if there was all the money in the world, it's fine to throw money around, but we don't have all the money in the world. And the question that we have at hand today is it appropriate to spend taxpayer dollars on things that may not be necessary anymore? And so my question, Mr. Gonzalez, at one point in time, there was state-sponsored speech directly. It was the form of town criers, correct? So government used to fund people to go out in the street and deliver the news of the day vocally at the street corners, correct? Okay, why don't we do that today?
Well, I think it's because we have better ways of delivering the news.
I think you get my point. Like today, at one point in time, there was very limited access to news, and there was an appropriate time where potentially we needed to have state-sponsored news. But is that the way? Do we need that today?
No, we do not. And may I quote Thomas Jefferson on this very point, since you bring this up? He said, "To compel a man to furnish contributions of money for the propagation of opinions which he disbelieves and abhors is sinful and tyrannical." This is what I base my opposition to public funding for media.
Yeah, and that's why I think that given this context, like, let's be real. It was said that we're attacking free speech. This is state-sponsored speech, and the very reason why we have these witnesses before us today isn't because they're totally being funded or completely being funded. We're not bringing in Disney Channel in here, right? We're not bringing in the National Geographic, right, for their content. The reason why we're having this conversation is because we are funding you, and because we're funding you, the taxpayers get to have an opportunity to ask, why are we funding some of this content that they might disagree with? Right?
Yeah, no, that's completely right. In fact, I think that PBS and NPR, but especially PBS, will thrive on the membership model. They keep saying it's such a small percentage. Well, if it's the public funding, if it's such a small percentage, then no problem.
Yeah. So, Ms. Maurer, I'm going to ask a very difficult question, but if you're in my shoes and you have to face the fact, can we fund Social Security or do we spend money on NPR? Which would you choose?
Congressman, I would argue that
if you had to pick, if you were forced to make a decision, there wasn't enough money to go around, Social Security or NPR?
We know how important public media is to our nation's seniors, sir.
More important than Social Security. I think the American people disagree.
I think that...
Ms. Kerger, let me ask this. would it be more appropriate to fund PBS or to fund veterans' health care? If given limited resources, which is where we're at.
I recognize the limited resources, and I feel that both are important for this country.
And I think what the American people want to know is when they're sending money, their taxpayer dollars, and they're funding things like Independent Lens. And look, I like some of the content on your stations. I love Nova. But you know what? Nova competes with National Geographic and Nature. Why are we funding something that competes with these private sector interviews? I like Sesame Street, but I also know that it's competing directly with Handy Manny, Doc McStuffins, and Little Einsteins, right? Those exist, and we're not funding them. They're not here having to defend their content. But because we are funding it, I'm going to ask you, why are we funding episodes of Real Lens, Independent Lens, about an episode called Real Boy, a trans teen navigates adolescent sobriety and physical emotional ramifications? That's what the American people want to know. Social Security.
We're out of time, but our witnesses can answer the questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was a documentary that was produced for adults as part of our primetime audience. And it was part of a point of view that we share to try to help people understand the wide breadth of experiences of people across.
There you go. Both. You got to be kidding me. If you could only fund one, what would you fund? Both. Both are necessary. NPR and PBS are as necessary to be funded with taxpayer dollars as Social Security. Try selling that. You can't sell that. So it's important to seniors. Well, I'll see my dad tomorrow night. I'll ask him, Dad, would you rather have your Social Security check or NPR? I think I know what the answer will be. Yeah, it was just, Jasmine Crockett, BS, blankety blank yesterday, cursing as she always does, talking about that this is a free speech issue. Republicans are taking away free speech. She's my congressperson. What a clueless human being. Seriously, she's like an elementary school student. And my apologies to elementary school students. But there's no freedom of speech issue here. And as I've said, we believe that PBS, like other purely commercial networks, have news departments that are political activists. It was brought up that of the editors, the 87 editors of NPR, of the 87 that you have, how many are Democrat? 87. 0 Republicans at NPR when it comes to their editors. And they claim there's no, forget about, as our accusation is not bias, it's political activism. Their president says, no, we don't see any bias at all. Pull the funding. 866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. I'm Gary McNamara. Eric out today, but he'll be back soon. He's out tomorrow too, but returns for Sunday night, Monday morning's show. Will be interesting to see where Signalgate goes today. As we said, it's the whole back and forth between a war plan and an attack plan got to be silly yesterday. It's when you look at the information that was released at that time where they said was not classified. Everything that I know about anything about classification, anything to do with, I know it wasn't there wasn't the minutia of what was going on, but any of those things would be classified as they were produced by the Pentagon, especially leading up to an attack, during the attack, and the damage assessment after it. Hegseth, I don't know how this is going to resolve itself, but you didn't see many conservatives at all. Like, I didn't see any defending him yesterday on that. So we'll see if that situation is resolved. More coming up on tariffs. Where's the president going to go? Is he going to be more lenient, as he has said, and then said that for 2 days this week? Then yesterday came out with the 45% tariff on non-American made cars. But what does that actually mean? We'll try to parse through that and a whole bunch more. All coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.